It is the day before a big performance. The dancers are tired and fatigued. You can slowly start to see them lose their energy as the rehearsal continues. As the rehearsal director, you don't want them to keep dancing because you know it will not benefit them. But how can you continue the practice when you still have material that you want to go over and cues you want to give? That's when you begin to introduce this idea of mental practice, or in other words, using the mind as a tool to negotiate the dance steps, to play out how the steps will work without actually physically performing the movement. Many dancers today practice this daily in classes and notate it as marking. But there are many forms of mental practice.
Mental practice can take the form as marking, which is walking through the phrase and implicating the movement without performing the movement full out. It can also be done just mentally by closing the eyes, listening to the music, and going through the dance in your head, imagining yourself performing on stage. Mental practice has two main goals and benefits. The first is to acquire knowledge of the skill by understanding the basic foundational and technical aspects. The second is to execute the skill so that it can be performed with the qualities and musicality the choreographer is asking for. As dancers, it is important to know when a good time to use mental practice is as opposed to physical practice. For example, mental practice would be beneficial when trying to learn a new complex petit allegro combination because the dancer is unfamiliar with the coordination of the upper body and lower body. Mental practice would help them pick up the choreography. On the other hand, a dancer wouldn't necessarily benefit by mentally practicing pliés at barre in the beginning of class. This is because the dancer is already aware of the choreography, is familiar with the sequencing and technical aspects of a plié, and they do not need to pre-rehearse before performing. Mental practices can also help promote movement re-education, which is the process of changing habits and finding new ways of working. For example, if a dancer struggles with holding tension in their fingers, maybe using mental practice to mark through the whole combination in their heads, thinking about relaxing through the fingertips, would be a great benefit to them. Studies done about mental practice versus physical practice show that physical practice is more beneficial than mental practice. Mental practice is better than no practice at all, and when the two are combined, they are almost as beneficial as physical practice alone. If you do a combination 4 times physically and 1 time with mental practice, it is almost as beneficial as performing it 5 times physically. The benefits of mental practice in dance training include helping reduce the amount of fatigue dancers can feel from repetitively doing something. It can be done when there is not enough space, prevents injury because the dancer is more aware of what they should be doing, and it can help dancers work out traffic patterns in a larger group. An able-bodied dancer capable of physically performing should use mental practice as a supplemental tool for physical practice as opposed to a substitution. For improvement, a dancer cannot depend on mental practice alone because skill enhancement demands the dancer to physically keep trying and keep finding new ways to work out the movement. Mental practice can be an injured dancer's best friend. When a dancer is injured, mental practice can help them stay on track with material and maintain technical aspects of already known skills. It is a way for injured dancers to still keep their brains active and process movement without physically doing it. Mental practice is used to prepare for skill execution and performance in 2 main ways. The first way is that it motivates the dancer. It allows them to focus on a specific task or goal. It allows them to feel more comfortable and confident with the phrasing of difficult material and choreography. And finally, it allows them to reduce the stress of a big performance because they already feel prepared and ready.
Mental practice is a cognitive process, aka a thinking process, that allows a dancer to mentally focus on one movement at a time by thinking about and rehearsing the coordination of the physical body and limbs. Mental practice is also used for figuring out strategies such as many complicated directional changes in a combination. Mental practice is successful for 3 ways. Firstly, the imagination allows dancers to visualize movement. This consequently sends pathways from the brain to direct muscles. This process engages muscle groups by sending signals of movement to that direct muscle group and area of the body. Secondly, when a dancer is either going through movement physically or mentally, they are using areas of the brain to know what movement comes next and keep them on track. When a dancer is practicing mentally, they are still engaging certain areas of the brain to plan out how they will efficiently perform the phrase. This could even be increased by using imagery to imagine yourself dancing. Finally, dancers use a lot of thought to figure out how to efficiently problem solve when performing a combination or piece. There are always physical obstacles that a dancer must think about and be conscious of in tandem to dancing. Mental practice allows dancers to focus on these problems and develop strategies to avoid them without the confusion of physically dancing. Imagery takes many forms. Some common examples seen in a dance class include mental imagery, which is using the mind to feel emotions of certain situations, external imagery, which encourages the dancer to watch themselves from a third-person perspective, internal imagery, which relies on the dancer feeling internal sensations to guide movement. There is even visual imagery in which the dancer tries to represent certain objects or things such as a tree. All of these forms encourage dancers to use their creative brains to think about movement qualities and dynamics of the movement. They keep the dancer engaged and interested in the creative process and storytelling aspect of dance. A dancer's ability to imagine movement the way it should be done and efficiently varies from each person. Some find the use of imagery to be extremely beneficial in guiding them through a storyline or motif to personally connect to and portray. Even if a dancer lacks the ability to imagine movement effectively, they can still benefit from this practice. Dancers use imagery for 5 reasons: cognitively, to remember long phrasing; in a motivational way, to achieve a skill at its highest potential; artistically, for a portrayal of a certain emotion or character; in a healing way, to get through material; and lastly, for no particular reason other than to express creativity.